Sayreville, New Jersey, your average American town. Prior to Hurricane Sandy, about 43,000 residents, 25% of which would be under the age of 18. Average American income of a home here in Sayreville, a little shy of $34,000. A number of homes have had their items removed during the year, but no one is presently living in these homes. You could see the impact that the water made on foundations, as well as other parts of their homes still today, a year after. Welcome to William Street, one of the 4 regions of our town that was directly affected by Hurricane Sandy. William Street is presently in the second wave of buyouts in some neighbors, as well as here, as you can see, a process of reconstruction of actually having to raise the house.
First days after Hurricane Sandy, it was the largest natural man-made disaster to affect the Diocese of Metuchen. People were affected with loss of employment, with loss of power, with loss of homes. But even those who were deeply affected responded to the bishop's call for the diocese collection. Parishioners who sat in pews just like this dug deep into their pockets, even though it was difficult times, to contribute. It's a real-life story of fish and loaves coming to our diocese. That collection formed the basis for which we'd be able to provide aid in weeks and days ahead. And the most vulnerable of our populations benefited because everyone reached in. And that's the great thing about our faith and how we work through this difficult time.
Shortly after the hurricane, Monsignor Dalton Hall became the first donation and distribution site for the residents of our town. Individuals from all parts of our state and corporations were sending food, necessary housing materials, as well as clothing that were either directly picked up by the residents here in our town or distributed by volunteers to the homes that were directly affected. It was early in December here at Monsignor Dalton Hall that there were actually the beginning of casework processing taking place. 2 days were selected, and representatives of both the Catholic Charities of the Diocese of Metuchen and Catholic Charities USA were here doing direct casework intake and processing to begin the process of assistance, of relief, and building towards, as they are now, recovery.
When you were first called about the storm, and you heard about all that devastation that went on in the community, what was the first thing that came to your mind?
Well, the first thing that came to my mind was, number one, I had to worry about the safety and security of the clients who lived with Catholic Charities, so all of our 24-hour facilities, make sure that they had what they needed. But then I just sat in my living room and said, most of our clients are already living on the edge, and most of them are already in despair and vulnerable. And so what is this storm now going to do to their lives? And how are we going to be able to be there to help them?
Now, after emergency shelter and care, what else did CC do to help people after the storm?
I think after immediate needs were met, which that was no small thing to get through that in and of itself, but I think that, you know, it was then trying to focus on how to get people back to work so that they could then be able to support themselves and be able to, you know, have resources coming into their house again. So I remember a lot of the first requests were for people to could we give them their deductible for their car insurance because their cars were wiped out and they couldn't get to work, and they had insurance but they didn't have the money for the deductible. Could we give them that? So, you know, we gave out a lot of money for that purpose, but then that allowed people to then get cars and go back to work. And we also tried to think about small business loans to get businesses back on their feet and to, you know, allow workers to go back to work, because the business would be open and then they would have income to come in, and then counseling. There was, you know, we were poised and ready to run groups and start to counsel people who were feeling, you know, pretty devastated.
And I know this was such a huge magnitude of a challenge. How were you able to get these people mobilized so quickly?
you work here and you know that people don't work here for the money. So you ask them to do, and they do. So all I did was send an email, and I had 50 people that wanted to help and, get things running. And then having a bishop like we have, who immediately takes up a collection and has just such confidence in our work, who just says, go out and get it done, and has all the confidence that we can do it, made us all not have to miss a beat. Like, we just got out, did what we had to do, and had the resources to do it.
Well, if I might interject, I'd like to tell a little story about asked to go out to South River from a case manager, and we went to see this home on Washington Avenue, and the house from the outside, to me, looked pretty good. The siding was there, the windows were up, but I opened the front door, and it felt like the scene in the Wizard of Oz, where she opens the door and the whole world is different. But when I opened the door, there was total devastation inside the house. The water level, which has now since receded, was up to the burners on the stove. So that's about 3.5 feet throughout the whole house. The floor joists were collapsed. You could look into the slab that was underneath. And we tried to assure the woman, who spoke very little English, hardly any. I spoke to her through an interpreter, her older daughter, and we said that we're going to do everything to try and reconstruct this house for you. And the daughter, who was doing the translating for me, started to cry. And I said, why are you crying? And before I could get an answer out of her, her mother started to cry. And then the father started to cry. I almost started to cry. And the reason was that the children, the 6 children that they had, they started crying because the kids want to be in a home, they want to be together, but they don't want to go back in that particular house, because they were there the night the water came rushing in. And they all had to go to the top floor and stay there, and they hoped that the house didn't wash away. So, you hear stories like this, and you want to help.
It's so sad that the children are afraid to go back to their own home.
I guess my next question to you is most of the work done?
No, the work is far from done. And one of the things that really concerns me is that many times when I'm asked about, you're still working on Sandy? Why are you still working on Sandy? That's been over for a long time. It is so not over. But people who haven't been affected really don't have a clue that we're going to be at this for the next 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. There is so much devastation in the areas that have been affected. We've helped over 5,000 people just here in our diocese. We have given out over $700,000, and we expect to be giving out twice that in the next 2 years. We're doing disaster case management for the state of New Jersey for the next 2 years. This is something that is not going to go away anytime soon.
While the wars behind me and the wars that affected our communities have receded, our problems have not. The challenges lay ahead are tremendous. The people who are unemployed or underemployed continue to exist. Those who are homeless may have found temporary shelter with other family members, but the strains will continue to grow, and the continued support is needed. We were lucky and blessed in those first few days as a Catholic community. We rallied. We unprecedented rallied to be able to respond to those emergencies and needs that were there. But our challenges still exist, and we need your help.
I would like to take this moment to thank Catholic Charities for your very generous gift to my family. I never dreamed we would ever be on the receiving end of a charitable donation, but we are very grateful for it. As we attempt to recover from the tragedy of losing our home, it is knowing that there is so much kindness and concern that gives us the strength to move forward. God bless you.
On behalf of the residents of the borough of Sayreville and of all those affected throughout our region, I wanted to extend a special word of thanks. A word of thanks most especially to our bishop, Miriam Majeski, to the workers and volunteers through Catholic Charities, the Diocese of Metuchen. A further word of thanks, too, to the representatives of Catholic Charities USA, who are on site to assist and continue in our long-time recovery. And finally, and the greatest word of thanks is to each of you for the hard work and dedication and the many donations that have come in to assist us thus far. And a word, please, too, of encouragement. Encouragement and assurance of our prayers and support for you. A word, please, of prayers and support and continue in our efforts of recovery and rebuilding of all our residents.